All right. So we're going to get into our review of Sinners. So Ira hasn't seen Sinners or The Last of Us seasons one, or the first two episodes of season two. So I brought in a special guest, Christian. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. First, I want to say thank you for welcoming me to the podcast. It's definitely cool to join. My name is Christian, and I'm a teaching artist, screenwriter, and musician in the city. And I help teach film concepts and arts concepts to middle school and high school students, and I work on independent practice stuff too. So, yeah, it's nice being able to talk about some cool just writing from an adaptation level and a horror movie level.
Yeah, I only just discovered that you do music because after you found me on Discord, I saw a link and I was like, oh, he makes music.
Oh, I forgot I have that link
Yeah, I
on
saw that
there.
Spotify
But
link
yeah,
there and I was like, oh.
I do.
Yeah, we're going to start with Sinners. So
All
I
right.
guess we'll just start with our
That sounds good.
spoiler free thoughts just on it before we get it, and then into the nitty gritty. You want to start off?
Yeah. Spoiler free. Immediately I'll say I think it'll be a foundational film. For the next few years. Um, I feel like every dec every decade in black film, there's a film that defies what the meta is gonna be. So like for I'd say 80s, it was Do the Right Thing. Then the 90s, it was Boys in the Hood. And then the Hood movie became like the genre of black film. And then in the 2000s, Tyler Perry hit and he kind of defined the meta of what black film kind of became. And then for the last, I'd say, past decade or so, we've been in the Get Out era.
Right.
Um, right now, I mean, we'll see with time, but
Get
I
Out
think we
was
might be in the Sinners era.
yeah, Get Out was 2015, right?
Yeah, it was 2016, so I
16.
think we're almost there, almost to the 10-minute mark. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I feel like the same way that Get Out kind of sparked this love of psychological horror, not just for black film, but for film in general. I feel like Sinners, I think it's going to be one of those meta defining films for the next few years because, yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed it from every level. Um, Sometimes with films that are almost too good to be true, sometimes I wonder if I enjoy them or do I enjoy the idea of them. With Sinners, I really enjoyed it on every level. The performances are incredible all across the board.
Oh yeah,
The dialogue is just very fun, and the characterization is very fun, enriched there.
for sure.
The I and I've seen people talk about the pacing of the film. I like the pacing of the movie,
I
and
thought
I like the fact that wait, sorry, good.
no, I was just I thought the pacing was perfect.
Yeah, like the fact that the first chunk of the film really was a period piece film.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that aspect, and it was just very cool to see
Yeah,
how much of it was a hangout film. Like you really got to see how everyone related to each other, their past relationships, and how it brought them to where they are in that current moment. So I thought the pacing was great. The music we can have a podcast to itself for because the music
oh
is
yeah,
incredible and it's such a key part of the thesis of the movie. But in regards to just spoiler free thoughts, I think that it's just incredible. It's one of those films that really just reminds you why the theater is cool, why film is cool, and what it's capable of. Because it's
absolutely.
been a while since I've seen a film. Like, it's been such a long time since I've seen a movie and thought, I've never seen anything like this. And especially a film that gets a budget like Sinners did. And like seeing what Coogler was able to do and the cinematographer as well. And I definitely want to search up her name to give her all of the props because visually is one of the best big budget films I've seen in a minute too. But yeah, overall, um, all of the high marks for Sinners. Kugler and company did incredible.
Yeah, for me. Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. It was so good that I had to see it thrice. Saw it 3 times.
Hmm.
First time I went to Cinemark. Second time I went to AMC because I was like, I gotta see it in IMAX. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
listen to Coogler just geek out about the way this was filmed and the various different formats you could watch it. And I was like, I gotta see it in IMAX. It'd be disrespectful
Yeah.
if I didn't. I wish I would have saw it in the 90 millimeter because they had that at AMC, but I saw it 3 times. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can't see it too many times. And plus, it was just tickets out EMC was expensive. Um, so like
Yes,
yeah,
they are.
I saw it. Yeah, saw it opening night, which I wasn't planning on doing. The moment I heard about the movie, I knew I wanted to see it. It's Ryan Coogler and it's a vampire movie. Of course, I want to watch that. Um, but it wasn't until I saw that video from who was it from Kodak, um, about him breaking down
Hmm.
the formats that I was like, okay, I have to see this opening night. He's convinced me. He's got me. Um, then I saw it
Yeah.
immediately the day after that in IMAX, and then the Tuesday after that, I saw it with my brothers before they left town. And yeah, it was, and they're twins, so it was very interesting going to go see the
Wow.
movie with my twin brothers.
That's cool.
They're not identical twins; they're fraternal twins, but it was still fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was incredible. And like you said, the performances, all of them, incredible. But the standout for me is Haley Steinfeld because it was just such a different role for her in comparison to everybody else. Everybody else
Mm.
have
Yeah.
played characters like this before, other than Miles Cadden, since this was his first role. It's his debut. Um, but
Yeah.
for her, it was just like she was putting all 15% of that black into this role because she was a different person. Yeah, she stood out to me, but Michael B. Jordan playing 2 characters also did an incredible job. And,
Mhm.
it's a testament to
Yeah.
how good he did that after a certain point, you just forget that he's playing both of those characters and you just see them as 2 separate characters. The second
You
time I went to go
do.
see it,
You really do.
my friend just straight up didn't know that that was the same actor playing both characters and just thought it was like twins playing the
Wow.
characters. Yeah, it was incredible. But let's get into spoilers. Let's get into the nitty gritty. Um,
Yep. I was going to it.
so what's crazy? The jump scares at the beginning of the movie did not get me the first time or the second time, but the third time I kind of forgot. So the first one caught me off guard. It didn't make me jump super hard, but it did
Mm.
make me go, "Oh, I forgot about that." But when I first watched it, I was just like,
Yeah.
it happened. I was like, I wasn't expecting that. And the second time I saw it, I think before the movie started, my friend asked me, "You said this isn't like a scary horror movie," and I was like, "No, it's not really scary." And then that happened, and they were like, "You lied to me," and I was like, "I
Like,
promise you,
oh,
it's
it's
not
not
that scary.
scary.
It's
Okay.
just these 3 jump scares at the beginning of the movie. These are the only parts that are really kind of scary."
Yeah.
But yeah,
Right. Like I'd say overall there were, but yeah, like I'd say overall there was three. Two, like definitely see what you mean. The one when Remick first goes to the house and like she's walking through the dark house and sees him lying in the corner, like sitting in the corner. I feel like that was the first one. But and this is characteristic of this jump scare, and I think a lot of the jump scares in the movie, the a lot of them aren't cheap. Like I feel like they are contextualized within the story and they make sense. It's not Slender Man in the 8 pages. It's very subtle jump scares. Like when when Haley Steinfeld's character is walking back into the juke joint and um Remick flies into the air,
yeah, it was a
like
good one.
it's very contextual. That was a very good jump scare, and it wasn't a close up. No music really was used at all. He just got up in the air and then
And then it
immediate
cut
smash
to
cut to the next scene.
Perlene singing.
Right. Like I feel like the way that they did the scares here was very tasteful, which is why I agree when you say it's not like a scary film. It's I would almost contextualize it more as creepy.
Hmm.
Like it's definitely more creepy and unsettling. And I feel like that was more the vibe that I got from it. Um, Especially when Mary, like when it's revealed that Mary is a vampire. I feel like that scene was terrifying. Like I feel like it was very unnerving just watching all of that unfold.
Yeah.
But overall, In regards to the spoiler-free aspect, or
Well, no,
getting
we're getting
into
to
the weeds of
spoilers. Yeah.
spoilers. Oh yeah, in regards to getting into spoilers, I wasn't expecting music to be as much of a huge thesis
Yeah.
point for the movie.
It was damn near
Like,
musical.
yeah, it really was a musical in a heavy extent. Even the first scene, before we see any characters and before we see the title, it's that narration scene of them talking about the history of storytellers over time,
Yeah.
talking about the griot and just, or the griot, and talking about that role in just society and role in community. And the first character that we start on is Sammy, is
Yeah.
Preacher Boy. It's the first character we start off on. Oh, and what's up?
Yeah. And,
Oh,
something I didn't notice until I think it was the second time was like those
mm,
opening like cultures that they start with was Irish, Native American, and then African, which is like the three main
mm,
cultures in it. Where Remick is Irish,
right.
and then you have the Native Americans that were chasing him to that like
Mm-hmm,
farmhouse, and then of course everybody else is black. Um, and that was very interesting and something I didn't notice until the second time I watched it. And there are several things like that where there was just little small things. There were never any like super big major things I didn't notice until the like second or third time, but there were some smaller
mm-hmm,
things that I was just looking for because I was just like kind of looking for extra details as I watched it those additional times. And Remick is so good.
mm,
He's such a great character in this, and him being
yes.
Irish just works so well for the story that they were telling. And you notice like when he first shows up, he's doing a pretty pitch perfect country accent, and he just sounds like just a white country
Yes.
dude in Mississippi. But then when he shows up to the juke joint the first time, his accent's slipping,
Mm-hmm,
and I'm not sure if that was purposeful or if
right.
that was just the actor's accent slipping. But if it was purposeful, I think that makes a lot of sense because at that point they're kind of like the mask is already slipped. We know that he's a vampire, so kind of it's
Right.
it's slipping through a bit there. We're hearing a bit of his accent, and then towards the end he just drops it completely. He's just Irish. Yeah, I saw a tweet from a dropout Jacob on Twitter. They said, "I can't stop thinking about the significance of the main vampire being Irish in Sinners. He empathizes with the oppression of Black Americans, but ultimately weaponizes his whiteness to become the thing he hated most by forcing his way of life onto them." Yeah, I like you could tell Remick is like he's not doing what he's doing out of hate. He doesn't hate Black people. He
He's
doesn't
not.
he doesn't really hate anybody other than like the British people who came and colonized Ireland. But he
Right.
still adopted their colonialist ideals and is forcing his way of thinking on others, like how he adopted Christianity, even though it came from his oppressors. Like he's still perpetuating the oppression that was done to him, and that's a very interesting aspect
Right.
of the character of Remick, where he believes that what he's doing is like making everything better, but really he's subconsciously just doing exactly what was did to him.
Yeah. And a lot of that theme ties into the vampire aspect for sure, I feel like, because so much of like the concept of the vampire is based around like you're not hurting people, you're saving them, you're bringing them into immortality, like you're revitalizing them. And I feel like they use the subtext of vampires, or Kugler and Company use vampires as a sort of representation for whiteness to an extent, or at least for power, which I feel like is a common theme in the film. Like, even, I believe it's Smoke, like when Smoke was talking to Annie, um, and he was talking about just everything that he saw, whether it was being in war or whether it was being in Chicago. He It was power. Like, it just all came down to power. It wasn't anything else. It wasn't being kind. It wasn't being compassionate. It wasn't culture. It was power.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's a subtle theme of power, or it's a underlying theme there in regards to power and immortality and what that means. And I feel like, yeah, that's what Remick is trying to sell. And Remick not being a white person or not being like a or I don't want to say not a white person because there is interplay between Irishness and
Yeah,
whiteness, but
but being a like marginalized white person.
yeah, being a marginalized white person specifically, that was done purposely for a reason. Having songs built into the context and putting it in the having Irish songs built into the text is definitely purposeful because in exchange for power, Irish American folks lost culture. And I feel like that's definitely an aspect of the film. It's not simply
Yeah,
just, I feel like
and the big
it's not cultural
conflict.
appropriation.
Yeah, the big conflict of that final act of the movie is Remick trying to reconnect with his ancestors because he can't see them anymore. And Sammy,
Mhm.
through the power of his music, can bring them back to him. I feel like it's maybe implied, or maybe I'm just assuming this, that I feel like once Sammy, if he was turned into a vampire, the power he had through his music would have been gone. I don't think it would have been there anymore. I don't think that Remick would have gotten what he
Yeah,
wanted by turning Sammy. I think the only way he would have gotten it is if he left Sammy as a human and let Sammy play that music. Otherwise,
mm,
I don't think through the means that he was attempting to reconnect with his ancestors, and not even ancestors, just probably even people that he lived with, since presumably he's been around for a long time. Um, he wouldn't have gotten that
right,
through turning Sammy into an undead vampire. I think Sammy would have lost that ability that he had to connect with people's ancestors, and
right,
the afterlife and the future.
right. Which goes into what everyone has referred to as the scene,
Oh
and I
yeah,
think it's been referred that way for a reason.
which is
Um,
it
there's a
surprised me
yeah,
because I thought people wouldn't like it. I thought people wouldn't like the scene
mm,
because I feel like I said, this movie is damn near a musical, and that was just straight up a scene straight out of a
yeah,
musical. And musicals are a
mhm,
mixed bag, I feel like, amongst most people. And
yeah,
whether or not people like musicals could go either way. Specifically live action musicals, I feel like most people like Disney movies, but when it comes to live action musicals, it's kind of like
mhm,
a back and forth thing between most people. And I thought that scene was a
sure,
lot, and I enjoyed it in the moment, but I thought that other people might think that it was too much and that they wouldn't like it as much. So I was happy to be wrong and see that so many people actually love that scene, and that it is now being referred to as the scene of the movie.
yeah. Like it's been a while since I don't want to say a while because it's a lot of great cinema in the world. However, it's been a minute since a scene has really made people think about what the medium of film can do, especially within a period piece context. Like, and if done badly, it could take people out of the time period. It can seem very contrived or it could seem wrong, but it made all of the sense in the world. Um, I feel like, I mean, of course, tying into the first scene in the film where it was narration talking about storytellers through time, it
Which that
really
exact
talked
same
about this
like
concept.
audio was played again in that scene towards the
Exactly.
beginning.
Yep. Exactly. And I feel like that's a common motif. But I feel like there's a concept made by Mary Baraka, like author Mary Baraka, and it's referred to as the the ever changing same, I believe. And it's basically talking about how through the decades, through various art forms, whether it's talking about a guitarist like a Buddy Guy, going into modern times, talking about what Funkadelic was doing, or what like Grandmaster Flash is doing with hip hop. Like it all is tied into this ever changing same. And I've never seen that concept illustrated so creatively on film and I've never seen it done like that before. And you could just really see how just it really talked about the power of black music in a cool way. And that's when we first see Remick. That's where we first see Remick and just the folks that he's rolling with. That's the first time we
Yeah.
see him after that's the first time we see him in the vicinity of the juke joint.
Yeah.
When he sees the power of the music and when he sees that, you know, Sammy and black musicians in general have the power to pay it forward for the people that were behind them and look into the future. And I feel like, yeah, everything you're saying with Remick being a marginalized white person and subsuming into whiteness, he lost a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to seek that. He wants that power to be in tune.
Yeah.
And
It's also
he lost that.
like
Yeah.
something that just came to me now at the moment that I don't think I've seen a lot of people say online is that not only is he forcing his ideals on them, but he's also trying to do what has been done to us for a very long time and steal their culture. He's seeing what they're doing. He's hearing the music they're making. He's seeing this party and he wants to be a part of it. And he wants it for himself. He wants to subsume all of these people so that now what they have is his, which is something that's been done to us black people for a very long time. And so in an interview Coogler had with the Breakfast Club, he mentioned how he went down a rabbit hole of research about music that led him to the idea for this film. And he said that he one day just offhandedly mentioned that there was no other music genre than rap where people talk about escaping, the kind of like the troubles of their lives, but then eventually end up falling victim to them. And he, uses Nipsey Hussle as a specific example. And then someone on his crew mentioned that grunge music was the same way. And then he went home, started listening to grunge, and then noticed its similarities to blues. And, that's what led him down to, the rabbit hole of, using blues music as the kind of like the main musical through line of this film, but also, learning something that I'm sure he already knew, but kind of was like emphasized in this research is that, black people are the blueprint of most of just popular culture in general. But especially music. Like the foundation of blues is the foundation of modern music, period. Rock music came from blues. Naturally, R&B came from blues. Blues is literally in the name of R&B. And country music, a lot of that also came from a combination of blues and like, white folk music. Like we're the blueprint for popular music across the planet, not just America and English speaking countries, but you listen to, I tend to listen to a bit of like 80s Japanese pop and all of that. 80s Japanese pop sounds just like American Japanese pop, which not American Japanese pop. I mean, just American pop in general. And naturally, American pop was influenced by black music. And just
like,
that,
especially that conversation. Yeah, like, because I mess with city pop heavy too, and like Ryuichi Sakamoto and like Yellow Magic Orchestra and a lot of that stuff. But then you listen to like Funkadelic, Sly and the Family Stone, and then you listen to like Prince and stuff, and it's like, oh, the way that they were using electronic drums is like, it's heavily indebted to black music for sure. And they will say it themselves. But yeah, like
it's always great when they admit it. When people don't kind of just gloss over that fact.
It's always great. Yeah. And whenever that conversation happens on the timeline, it's very interesting. I'll say that. But
people love to deny it.
Oh, people do love to deny
it. And like,
they will fight for it.
Yeah, Slim says it in this movie. White people like the blues just fine. They just don't like the people who make it.
Yeah.
And I forget where
that's a common thesis of it.
Yeah, I forget where the quote comes from, but everybody wants to be a nigga until it's time to be a nigga.
Paul Mooney.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly just that phrase. Because people like the aesthetic, but they don't really want to understand us as a people. And yeah, overall, with that concept. I feel like Sinners definitely touches on that with people wanting the music and loving the art that came from the struggle we went through, but not the struggle itself. When getting into the origins of the blues, so much of it was based around work music, so much was based around chain gang music, so much of it was based in the church, so much of it was based around active reactions to pain or active reactions to unpaid labor. That's what a lot of the blues came from.
I
And
didn't. So
I feel like,
there's a scene that was almost cut. That was what's the word I'm looking for? Improv. That again, I didn't dig into the rabbit hole. I kind of just saw it, the headline, and I think I forget what I saw. Maybe it was a tweet or something. And then I kind of just moved past it. But I think it might have been
uh-huh.
the scene where Slim like starts humming after he tells that story about his friend who was lynched. And I think that part was improv. I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
was like a part of the film. And they almost cut it out, but they decided to keep it. And like you said,
Mm,
that's an example of music coming from pain.
that that is probably one of my favorite scenes of the film, if not my 1B with that scene in the movie. Um, yeah, that scene is incredible because it really does demonstrate the blues in real time. Like it's him talking about this traumatic experience that happened with a friend, him reacting to the fact that he saw a chain gang and of people that he knew every single one of. It was him processing that pain in real time, and all he could do was hum. Like that processing of like taking pain and taking tragedy and making it into something else, whether that be humor, whether that be song. That scene illustrated the power of black music and how it transcends time because Stack was like, hey, like pick up that guitar, you got that guitar in your hand.
Exactly.
Like Sammy understood, like, this is what we do. We don't, it's not for vanity or anything of the sort. Like, we are, we're doing it for the folks that had the experience that Delta Slim's friend had, or the folks that are in the chain gang, or the folks that are like doing free labor in prison uniforms, or the sharecroppers. Um, which kind of goes into the power thing again. I kind of want to pivot from music. It's another great scene in the film where they just started juke joint, and is just Smoke is frustrated with Annie and Stack because he notices that a lot of the sharecroppers are using like currency that they can only use in
Yeah.
town, like
Plantation
the
dollars,
tokens.
wooden nickels.
Yeah, yeah, the wooden nickels, and Smoke is just he's upset, and just the explanation from Annie and Stack, like these folks have been working all day. Like this place is a respite. This is a rest. This allows them to rest. This is a safe space for them, a place where they can let loose, have fun, um, and just push themselves away from that life. And again, Smoke thinking about power in that extent. And I feel like it also kind of ties in place to the end as well of the film, where Smoke is dying, or Smoke is going through all of his items before he goes on his last stand. And he sees all of those faces of the people. Um, yeah, like that scene, you see just all of the beautiful people that came into his orbit, that came to the space that are
Yeah.
no longer
I love
there
that scene
anymore.
because it very easily could have just been him focusing on his brother and Annie and Mary and Preacher Boy. But no, it was those people, but then it was also the people that came to help, the people that was just enjoying the party, people that he didn't know that well, but
Yeah,
that he saw their faces. He saw that they were having a good time. And also the people who were just
right.
there to help him, and have Stack achieve the dream that they had. Um, could you remind me the name of the Chinese couple? I can't remember their names at the moment. It was Bo, and I forget his wife.
Bo and
I'm gonna have to look it up.
Bo and Grace.
Bo and Grace.
Yeah, yeah.
They were another aspect of just how different races were treated during that time. Something I didn't notice, but our coworker Cam pointed out to me when I was talking to her was that they had a store on the black side and the white side of town. I didn't notice that until the third time I watched it, because I watched it again that night after I had that conversation with her. That I thought that like area of was all black. I didn't notice that when the camera panned across the street that there were a bunch of white people over there and in that store and just on that side of the street. I didn't notice that at first. And I think it was kind of purposeful because the camera was focused on the daughter crossing the street and everything else was out of focus. So you couldn't even, like, it was easy to focus on her and not even notice the white people. But I was looking for it that time because I was remembering what Cam told me, and I was like, oh wait, all those people are white. And I didn't even notice. I think maybe my mind filled in that maybe they were Asian, but no, they were all white. And the what were they? The Cho family. They existed on both sides. They were allowed to exist on both sides because of the color of their skin. Wasn't quite as dark. They were people of color, but they weren't quite as colorful. So they were allowed to have a store that served both sides. And there's a lot of hate online towards Grace that I think is unwarranted.
I mean, I think it's unwarranted too. Like, I feel like in regards to film analysis, it's like, why did Grace do that? But two things. One, plot. Things have to happen.
For sure.
Characters make decisions. Characters think differently from each other. Plot be plotting sometimes. Let the plot happen. So in regards to what Grace did, I'm cool with it.
But also, I think on top of that, like, ultimately, if she didn't do what she did, a lot more people would have died. Even if it was an emotional reaction. And I feel like a lot of people, they love to ignore the fact that she mentioned more than just her daughter. I've watched it 3 times. Every time she says, they threatened my daughter, but also the rest of the town. What about our friends and family? Like, you think it's going to stop here? It's not. We have to take a stand. We have to do something now. Otherwise, he's just going to go and turn our loved ones. And then that's hundreds more people against us. We have to do something right now. Otherwise, it's going to be too late. And ultimately, she was right.
Honestly, Grace was kind of MVP. Yeah, she was right. I feel like, I was going to say Grace was MVP, but I do think MVP might be Annie.
Yeah, no, Annie was
Smoke's wife.
It was crazy hearing her.
She was MVP for sure. She was,
mention Haints, because it was so, I heard her say Haints. I was like, oh my God, Haints, because I'm playing South of Midnight, which is a video game that's out right now on Xbox that takes place in the South. I think it's in Louisiana. And yeah, it's surrounding just that kind of like Black spiritual culture, and the main character is a weaver, and the main enemies you fight are called Haints, and the menu has a like really good kind of like breaking down the various different kind of like lore of the world. That's really fun. And just hearing the word Haints in that specific context of this character Annie, who has a very like Louisiana accent, so I assume she's probably from Louisiana. And yeah, it's just because was it I forget who said it, but it was definitely after they returned to a vampire. It was either Stack or Cornbread said that Bayou bullshit. So she's definitely down a little further south than even where they already are. And yeah, it was just cool to be interacting with 2 pieces of art that touch on that culture.
I saw the art style for that game and it looks incredible. It looks very cool.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting connection to point out, because I didn't think about that.
I want to get to the supernatural side. I want to get into the actual. Let's get into the meat. I want to get into the meat and potatoes. Get into the nitty gritty about like some of the bigger moments, especially towards the end, because like you said, half of this movie is a period piece, and then it's the second half where it becomes a horror movie, where the vampire stuff kind of takes a forefront. Um, I want to start off by saying that there's a lot of really good comedy in this. This movie's really funny.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
comedy is all about timing, and the timing on all of the little jokes that they do in this film are incredible. It's a really funny
Hmm.
movie. Especially Slim definitely he's the comedic relief of the movie. And he's both the
He
comedic
is.
relief and the heart of the movie at the same time. And he
Yeah.
just supplies pretty much all of the comedic moments. Like the moment he's introduced when Stack pulls out that beer and he's like, "Ooh, what you got there, boy?" That scene's hilarious. And then that hard cut to him playing the harmonica and Preacher Boy
Immediately.
on the guitar was so funny. And him talking about stuff,
Yeah.
I knew a vampire. She was light skinned too. Bit me everywhere but my neck. I was like, oh my god. Slim was hilarious.
He was. Like, I
And
feel like in regards to just comedic moments, he definitely had that on lock.
yeah, I feel like
It was a
in a similar
oh,
vein, this movie is also a lot of people mention without ever seeing a naked body, one of the sexiest movies
oh
made within like the last decade.
yeah, oh for sure. Like I feel like it's definitely very kind of reminds me of in the 1930s in order to avoid a lot of like the production codes and not get banned in the 30s, like the way that they went around doing sex scenes. I feel like Sinners, it was very, again, without a lot of nudity or without a lot of explicit stuff happening on screen. It is a very, it can get very erotic, which thought it was kind of harken back to a lot of films at that time before. Because it's for a lot of those like older studio system films, so many of them weren't immediately explicit, but whether it was through dialogue, whether it was through the way that they shot stuff, you would watch those films and be like, oh, they're nasty. Like they were doing something else in those movies. Like they figured something out.
For sure.
But yeah, I feel like yeah, the dialogue for sure. Some of the lines of dialogue, like the first time Annie and Smoke reconvene, like the ending of that
Oh my
scene,
god, that's
it
probably my favorite scene in the movie when she walks up to him and like I don't even know if it's worth me repeating it because I'm just gonna have to cut it all out. But what she said, I was like, God damn.
right. Yeah,
I
and
was
I
like,
know what line you're talking about. That line is one of the most romantic lines I've heard in a movie in a minute.
and she was like, I
Yeah,
thought you
just
changed your mind, and I was like, oh my god.
yeah,
Oh boy.
yeah.
Earlier
Um,
today, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about like what is like some of the hottest lyrics in music, and they were just like going down
hmm,
these music lyrics that weren't necessarily raunchy, but were very erotic in the same way that Sinners was. And I was just, well, in Sinners they say things explicitly. They never show anything specifically, but they definitely say things. But it kind of reminded me
oh
of
yeah, they
that.
say things. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Especially, think yeah, Stack giving Preacher Boy advice about a button
Yeah,
recurringly through the film. Just like a lot of subtle dialogue like that was very good.
but like
Um,
talking more
I
on
thought it
the
was very well written.
yeah, talking more on the romance though. I want to talk about Annie and Smoke. So there's a lot of people out there
Hmm.
who, when that first introduction with Annie, for some reason thought that she was his mother, which is some implicit bias there, where um, dark skinned black women plus size tend to play
Yeah.
very specific roles in TV and film. So when people saw that character, they didn't
Right.
think, oh, that couldn't possibly be his lover. That has to be a family member or something like that. Whereas, like, I feel like with the
Hmm.
context surrounding it, I immediately was like, did baby in her backyard, and I assume that's his kid. That's clearly the person who he had the
Yeah.
kid with. But not everyone put that
Hmm.
together, and um,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily completely at the fault of everyone who felt that way. For some people, it is, but for others, it's kind of just like the way people have been conditioned because of the way women who look like her are portrayed in movies.
Right. Yeah. Well, I didn't know that people responded that way to the scene or thought that she was his mom. Yeah, I feel like for sure it's underlying colorism there, and just
Colorism,
being film watchers.
some like bit of body shaming there.
Yeah, and body shaming too. Yeah, like which, like another one of our coworkers, like talking about the film with her, she's saying like it was cool to see. It was cool to see Annie being played by who she was being played by. Like she is essentially the lead love interest in the film and the spiritual, like she's the soul of the movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like seeing Annie's role being played by a just like a just a someone who doesn't fit the bill of who's consistently cast in period films, because often
Well, she was in
women that are
Lovecraft
lighter
Country.
skinned. I didn't watch Lovecraft Country.
Yeah, she was in Lovecraft Country. But speaking of Lovecraft Country, the main love interest of Lovecraft Country was Journey Smollett, who is a light-skinned woman.
Journey Smollett.
A skinny light-skinned woman, and,
Right.
very traditionally attractive. Which, don't get me wrong,
Right.
goddamn, Wunmi Mosaku is goddamn gorgeous. She is absolutely beautiful. I follow her Instagram, and the photos she's been posting from like the press tour are incredible.
There's been a lot of folks in the comments like this entire cast is one of the most beautiful casts in the planet.
Oh yeah, full of
like the main
also
thing to hear from.
Other than Mary, full of dark skinned black people, all the way through.
Right, which is tight.
Looks like maybe
I think that's very cool that it's.
I guess Cornbread is the only exception.
Yeah, he's the only exception.
I was about to say, I feel like he's the lightest person in the cast, and he's not even super light.
Right. Yeah, like I do like the fact that it was not just like black folks, but a diverse set of black folks, and in regards to like different types of ages, different types of complexions, different types of also different types of Southern.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was very cool too. Like you had folks that were from the Delta, like just like Mississippi black folks, and then you had like what you were talking about with Annie presumably being from like kind of like Louisiana area. It was cool seeing like just different types of black people in the way that they were portrayed, in the way that they were written. I thought that was very, very cool.
Yes.
And yeah, it's very, hearing a lot of those comments talking about Wunmi Mosaku's casting as Annie, it really is telling in regards to who gets certain roles or not. I feel like due to casting in the past, like when we think about someone like a Loretta Devine, or when we think about like a Octavia Spencer, they're often given like these warm motherly roles, often to white women, and often I feel like they're expected to play more servant roles, and they don't really have any sort of interest in their personal lives or any sort of like personal drive. They're only there to be a supportive mother or servant figure. And I feel like that's just, of course, like it's just anti-blackness manifesting itself in film. And I feel like it's just very tired and boring. And I think that them going that route with the film and just having a cool cast of just a very cool cast of black folks, and having Wunmi Masako really just lead the charge in regards to that role. I thought that it was cool.
Yeah, in a way she still does kind of like fill some of those tropes that a woman like her would normally play in this movie, but there's so much more on top of it that makes it more than that. But I wanted to get into the more supernatural stuff in this with the vampires, and specifically vampires needing permission to enter buildings, which you mentioned when we first talked about it, Sinners, a little bit, that you weren't aware of that trope, of that being a part of
I was not aware of
the weaknesses of vampires. Yeah, that they're not allowed into buildings. I forget where I first saw it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Vampire Diaries on CW. where that's like
Mm,
a big part of
I was
that
not
story.
aware.
And yeah, it wasn't until so I noticed it. It was with Cornbread that I was first like, oh, that's what they've been doing this whole movie. Like when he first went to those clan members' house, he was trying to get permission to enter their house. And when he first came with the clan members to the juke joint, he was trying to get permission to enter the juke joint. I like was
Hmm.
hyper focused on it the second time I saw it because I was like, oh, that's what they were doing at that moment. I was aware of the trope, but it wasn't until they hung a hat on it with
Yeah.
Cornbread that I was actually like paying attention to it and realizing, oh, okay, that's cool. They're doing this because there's one of my favorite like underutilized tropes of vampires is them needing permission to enter buildings, which is a really fun weakness that they have. And them leaning on that in this movie was really good and also plays into the themes.
Hmm. Which I'll be honest, not knowing that vampire concept, I was just like, oh, they must have like nice manners. That's just what I thought. I was like, oh, they're being very courteous. Um, like I was like, oh, I didn't know vampires were this nice. That's cool. But seeing how they tied it into the subtext, knowing that's a vampire concept, that is very cool. And that is very subversive. Cause yeah, I was like, oh, they must really want to play in this juke joint. I didn't trust them, of course, because of the scenes that happened before. But yeah, it was just like, oh, they just want to come inside. They just want to play some music.
Yeah, I want
Which
to.
another funny scene,
Yeah, go ahead.
like when they were playing Pick Poor Robin Clean,
Yeah,
and Stack was like nodding his head to the music. Like
yeah.
that was
And
another
Cornbread
funny
leaned over and
scene
was like,
too.
they actually not that bad.
Yeah, they not that bad. I thought that was funny too. But yeah,
But I
um,
I love how
yeah,
the visuals of the vampires, how they have that glint in their eye to symbolize that they're a vampire. It's really cool. In an interview with
mm,
Straw Hat Goofy, Coogler said that Puss in Boots was a huge
uh,
influence on Sinners, and specifically
I saw that
cited,
clip. I
yeah,
saw that clip.
the character of Death, and specifically his eyes and demeanor, um, as inspiration for Remick and the visuals of the vampires. And if you've seen Puss in Boots and the Last Wish, you know exactly what he means. Where Death in that has, big red
Hmm.
eyes, but also sometimes his pupils would have this white glow to them, or his irises specifically would have this white glow to them. That no, pupil was the right word. Iris is what surrounds the pupil. But yeah, it would have that white glow the same way that the pupils do in Sinners, and that's really cool. And just hearing him just
That is cool.
talk about animation in this reverent way and having this respect for it, you love to see it. Just a filmmaker like Coogler giving respect where it's due to animation, where a lot of people don't. And I'd be real curious to see what an animated project by Coogler would be like. I feel like that could be sick. Um, in that same interview,
Oh, cool.
he mentions that
Yeah.
the storyboard artist for Black Panther, both Black Panther films and Sinners, some of them worked on Pixar movies. So who knows? Maybe that's in
Mm,
the cards one of these days. It'd be cool to see Coogler make an animated movie.
yeah.
But
That would be cool. Cause I feel like yeah, like in regards to like the animation thing, so many cinematographers use animation as a reference point for film. So it is cool seeing Ryan Coogler. It's cool seeing him tie that to parallel there, like tying that connection. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
yeah.
But
But to wrap things up, I
um,
want to talk about the music and to focus on
yeah,
Sammy and the mid credits.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
yeah. So uh goddamn Miles was his last name?
oh yeah, Miles Caden.
There you go. Miles Caden is incredible. When I found out, like, I think it was in open credits, it said introducing Miles Caden. I was like, oh, first movie, huh? Um, he was
Yeah, it
so
was like
good.
introducing.
He was so good.
Yeah,
He was incredible. He
yeah,
was he was basically the main character alongside Smoke and Stack, or I guess Stack more so,
mm,
or Smoke more so than Stack. But it was basically they were the leads.
yeah,
Smoke and um, Future Boy. Sammy.
Mhm.
And yeah, he was
And shout
incredible.
out, and before going on Preacher Boy a bit more, shout out to Saul Williams playing Preacher. Um, for the bits that he was in the film, he was very good.
Yeah, he was.
And yeah, yeah, like
The
also
way
just shout out to Saul Williams in general
Yeah, the
as
way
a
they shot him
wait, what's up,
with
sorry.
having like just his face be covered in shadow so much at the time when he's talking to Sammy was very interesting and very
Yeah,
clearly purposeful.
yeah. And also just in the introduction to the film, the framing of Sammy walking back into the church and the crosses surrounding his father. Like I feel like there was a lot of cool visual imagery there. But um in regards to the music, even before even before getting into the tracks themselves, I feel like there's always been an interesting relationship between like especially when getting into guitar lore and blues guitar lore, like the intersection between like secular music and the devil within a context of the church.
Right.
Like folks have been talking about the Robert Johnson story and how like that was definitely inspiration for the film, Kugler himself. And just those stories of like the guy who sold his soul to the devil in order to play well, even going all the way up to like 2012 2013 era YouTube talking about like the Illuminati and stuff like that. Like there's always been this relationship between black music and people assigning the devil onto people or ascribing the devil onto them. And I feel like that was a very interesting subtext of the film because even for me getting into music vaguely when I was younger or even touching an instrument, I always was told like be careful. Like I feel like that conversation, like especially for like black musicians in the church or folks that came up in the church, if you engage with music, like I remember the first time I brought a record, like a rap record, and my mom was like, I don't want to hear any profanity coming out of the walls. Like there was always just like some sort of like the devil, whether it's like a metaphor. I feel like it's always had a some sort of a subtext due to the fact that black music is so deeply tied to the church,
Yeah.
which is what Sinners definitely taps
It's
into
also
heavy.
a matter of course, Christianity just not being an inherently it's a black religion. It was adopted by us after it was forced on us by our oppressors,
Right.
and using that religion to then demonize a thing that Slim says in this movie. This is something that wasn't forced on us. We brought this with us, and now it's being demonized
Exactly.
using something that was forced on us that we didn't bring with us, and that is a very purposeful you know story being told there.
And like happened with the blues, happened with jazz, and like jazz being considered the devil's music. Like I feel like the film, like even when like the scene where Preacher or Jedediah is talking to Sammy, talking to Preacher Boy, and he's just like, the devil's gonna follow you home. Like I feel like there's there was a very subtle religious conversation going on there. And um believe yeah, one of our coworkers, Naja, um, she was saying that like her and her parent were clapping when Sammy drove away from the church. Because I think that it is something cool about like Sammy kind of being in the religious background and then going to the juke joint and seeing the power of what he does. And it's something special about the fact that the final end credit scene is him singing "This Little Light of Mine, I'm Gonna Let It Shine."
Hmm.
But yeah, like on the music of the film, yeah, Ludwig Göransson. I think that Ryan Coogler and Ludwig Göransson's story is a cool.
I didn't initially know that
Yeah,
he worked on the soundtrack until the credits, and I was like, oh, that makes all the sense in the world.
yeah, and like I feel like their story is a cool definition of like working with who's next to you. Because seeing how great Goranson is at taking the subtext of the film and the concept of, like, taking themes and concepts of the film and incorporating it into the score. He's great at that.
He
People realize that.
yeah, he
Oh,
just
sorry, go
you
ahead.
could tell that for him there's a lot of respect for the cultures whose music he's adapting for certain things. It's
Exactly.
because he's done it with Black Panther too, where it's like he's taking music from a culture that very much isn't his and like making it something special.
Yeah, and he's paying it forward.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely paying it forward, especially with some of the instruments used here, especially with some of the people that he got involved with the film. Uh, yeah, like, which I definitely want to get into Buddy Guy. Like, I definitely want to
Oh
get
yeah,
into him being
that
Sammy
just that end
and the
credit scene or that
importance of
mid credit
that.
scene in general.
Yeah. But yeah, especially for the scene. I feel like the score in that scene and making that work and not having it be clunky or messy or contrived. I feel like it's listening to the soundtrack, you can see it. You can see the film. Um, so yeah, I feel like the score was great. Miles Caton was a very great performance from him. And yeah, I think the music itself was great, and I think the music thematically just was very cool. And yeah, definitely want to get into Buddy Guy and how cool it was seeing him in the film. Like, it kind of reminded me of, like, watching Malcolm X and seeing Nelson Mandela pop up in the end of the movie. Like, it was kind of like that type of cool cameo where it's just like, oh, this is a legend. It definitely kind of gave me that vibe. Because Buddy Guy is the living embodiment of what the film is touching on. So I feel like him being Sammy, I feel like it's very cool. And it definitely adds on to that concept of this film basically being all of those stories about blues guitarists in the past. What
Mm-hmm.
if one of those stories was true?
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what it is.
I
Um,
also with that scene, I want to touch on some of the like I want to say racism in the black community towards interracial couples that exist. I don't know how you
was
feel
that
about
a
this.
discourse too?
Yeah, uh, but I don't know how you feel about this in particular. But I'm not a fan of people, black people especially, pretending like that black people can't be racist towards white people. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of people pretending like we're
Mm,
somehow above that we're somehow
mm,
incapable of being racist towards white people specifically just because white people wronged us for so long. That's just not true. There is just
mm.
a such thing as being prejudiced towards white people as a black person and just straight up being an asshole towards them when not all of them deserve it. And
That is
sometimes
possible.
that
But people were
happens.
doing it with the context of the film?
Yes, so it hasn't been like heavy, but there's a couple of very specific examples of people treating Stack and Mary's relationship as it's not real. It's not That's not real love. It can't be real because it's a black person and a white person. How could their love be real? And I specifically there was a person who said that like on their podcast they were going to have a discussion about the love between Smoke and Annie, and then love in quotation marks between uh, Stack and Mary. And in the comments you have people going like, why quotations marks? Why are you saying the love isn't real? And it's like, bruh,
That's
they
crazy.
persisted 60 years after the events of the
Yeah.
movie. I, I think they are in love. I think that we could say with
Goodness.
our full chest that they actually love each other and want to be together. And the context is that
Like,
it was the world that they were living in, the fact that they would have both been hung by their necks if they even tried, that kept them from being together.
but with Stack and Mary, I feel like I don't want shout out to all of our coworkers. I feel like I'm gonna keep on quoting them. Um,
Oh yeah.
shout out to this, but it, it's definitely a layer of Mary chose whiteness. Like
Mm.
Mary chose whiteness, and that's what initially caused the rift between Stack and Mary. And I
Well,
feel like they allude to it, and I feel like it's definitely like a subtle theme there of like Mary just kind of
I don't
assigning
think
with
she chose
whiteness or
whiteness though.
like having a white or not choosing. I feel like she kind of like they get into some of the subtext with her having a white husband, with her being on that side of the tracks. And even though like she's still like in community and is family with Annie and Smoke and Stack, like Mary, she realizes that she doesn't want to assign with that side, but for the past few years it seems as though she did.
Mm.
And that's where some sort of a rift was. And I feel like there's definitely like a very subtle subtext there of, you know, Stack, Smoke and Stack leaving Mississippi and going away. And while they were gone, Mary kind of, she kind of went on her own path and chose that path. And, you know, Stack comes back and marries a different person to an extent from the Mary that was there before they left. I feel like it was their relationship as well and how it evolves in the movie is very interesting to me. And I feel like they allude to a lot of things, but it's not like uh but even at the
Yeah, I feel
beginning
like
of the film somewhat, like when Sammy asks Mary, like, what are you? Yeah, one of her coworkers like really was talking about how it reminded her of the film Passing and how like Mary seemed to choose whiteness the same way that like Remick is dealing with the choosing of whiteness in comparison to community. I feel like
yeah, I feel like the thing
Mary is a
is,
very
I don't think Mary chose whiteness. I feel like it's implied that um Stack chose whiteness for her to protect her. It's like I feel it's heavily implied. Like she kept saying, like, I waited for you. I didn't want to be white. I wanted to be with you. Like she didn't decide I want to be with this
mm,
white man. She wanted to be with Stack, but he didn't want to be with her because he knew that they like a white girl and a black man just aren't long for this world in 1932, and he pushed her away and he pushed her towards that, and she kind of just she went with it. There was definitely an aspect of her having to make that choice and be like, okay, ultimately I'm gonna have
yeah.
to go in this direction because clearly he doesn't want me. But it was still a matter of, I think that if he decided to be with her, ultimately they probably would have got killed if we're being real. But I think she would have done it.
Mm,
I think that after a while she just had to keep it pushing.
got you. I see what you, like Mary made the decision, but Stack influenced that decision heavily. Like it was definitely contextualized by Stack leaving to go to Chicago with Smoke.
Because the moment they came back,
Yeah.
she was locked in.
Yeah, she was like
Something I didn't think about it too much. I feel like it was a passing thought and then I kind of moved on, was the fact that I felt like the movie was kind of showing vampirism as, once you're a vampire, you're evil now, and it's up for you. You got to die. But then at the end, you know, Stack and Mary come back, and they
Mhm.
seem as cool as they were before they became vampires. Um, and I think it was a matter of Remick's influence as the like lead vampire, the person that turned all those people, or at least the person that turned the people that then eventually went on to go turn other people, and kind of like having influence and control over everybody else, that resulted in all of them being the way that they were. And once he was dead, now they were just themselves with the, you know, advantages and weaknesses of being a vampire. And because of that, that's why
Mhm.
he was able to keep that promise to Smoke, and they were able to go on and live their own lives and, you know, leave Sammy alone because
Mhm.
they no longer were under the influence of Remick. So they could be their own vampires versus being forced to be what he wanted them to be, and, you know, subsume their culture like he was trying to do. I'm also curious if they still hold on to the knowledge that they got from all of the people. Because every time somebody was subsumed, they all gained the knowledge of everybody that was in like the hive mind that Remick created. I wonder if they keep all that knowledge. That would be interesting.
That would be interesting. And I do think that even though the ending is sad. No, the ending is sad. It's not an even no. Yeah, the ending of the film is sad to an extent. I think it is cool that Stack was able to uphold that promise and allow Sammy to let his light shine. Um, yeah, and also my partner pointed out the detail that the name of Buddy Guy's either Sammy's band or like the name of the venue was called
Yep,
Perlene's.
Perlene's.
Which is another fun detail.
Yeah, I saw a tweet that said,
yeah,
it was so good he named a whole club after.
That's crazy. 60 years later.
Yeah, 60 years later, a whole club named after her. He did not forget his first time.
He did not. He did not.
Also, playing the blues it would be hard to forget that night. A lot more than just that happened.
Right. Yeah, that is a canon event night. But yeah, like kind of touching on like what you're saying, like about like some of the discourse in regards to like Stack and Mary and just kind of like race structure and class structure in general. I feel like there's a lot of a subtle, I guess sometimes subtle, sometimes like key part to the text analysis in regards to kind of the caste system of race and how it functions. I feel like there's definitely a part of the text where it gets into that, especially in regards to like subtle shades of classism of Smoke being frustrated about the workers using tokens, or like Remick kind of resigning himself to being a vampire, or Mary's relationship with community, with the life that she has versus the life she really wants. Like I feel like, and how the Chose interplay with that as well, serving one side and serving the other. I feel like there is like a overall like race discussion and class discussion there in regards to how everyone relates to each other. And I really, that scene with Smoke when he's talking about power with Annie, it's just very interesting, especially because it's like it's not even just talking about, it talks about power in the economic sense, but it also gets into power in the vampiric sense, and just in regards to culture too, and how like I always think about this, but Y2K culture is is an aesthetic, but it's made up of Japanese Harajuku culture. It's made up of 90s hip hop. It's made up of street culture and fashion and street magazines and stuff. But then all of that culture eventually becomes an aesthetic. And I feel like it definitely gets into the aestheticism that gets associated with black arts, and how like a lot of the culture that's there kind of gets sapped out and becomes an aesthetic, which I definitely think plays into the whole pick poor robbing clean scene.
Which that is very specific song choice.
Very specific. Yeah, there's too much subtext with this movie. The fact that they renovated the juke joint from a killing floor, like there's so much imagery here. Like there's so much there in the subtext of the movie in regards to just the importance of black spaces.
Yeah, we barely got into the fact that they were always planning to come back and take them all out.
Like there's so much stuff. And also like that scene, the last stand scene with Smoke. Of course the scene was great. Especially when he's transitioning to the ancestors and seeing Annie and his child again.
Yeah, and like in that moment, he was prepared to die. He took off the necklace that she gave him, the charm, and put on the his brother's dog tags and said, I'm going to go to war and I'm definitely going to die in this battle.
Right. Like I feel like that scene was great. And going back to the scene with the faces, that one of our coworkers shouted out to me, and it's like such a good scene. Going back to that scene, it's not the space, the people are the space. Like, and I feel like that's
Yeah.
another key message, that like wherever we are, we make the space. We make it. Whether it's like a juke joint or whether it's somebody's car, us expressing joy and expressing community, we make the space wherever we are.
Yeah, you
And I
talk
feel like
about
that's another cool message.
yeah, you talk about that
Yeah.
classism with Smoke, where they'd gone away and managed to make money, make more money than anybody else around them, through crime,
Hmm.
but and now he wants power and money is power, where
Hmm.
Stack is he's more in touch with where he came from than Smoke is. And overall, just
Yeah.
Stack is kind of like, he also kind of still looks back on his father fondly, where Smoke does not at all. And he kind of just he still connects with those people and understands where they're coming from, and isn't just there to make money, but also there to, like you said, give them a place to just be a community and have a good time, and take a weight off their shoulders.
And Smoke saw that.
Yeah. So there are a couple more
Yeah.
things I want to talk about before we wrap up. Try to make it quick. Is
Absolutely.
you mentioned, like, we talk a lot about just the Black experience and culture, and Coogler talks about in several
Uh-huh.
interviews that he's done, and stuff on the press tour, about how he's
Hmm.
using these films, Fruitvale Station, Black Panther, Creed, Sinners, to kind of capture Black history, and in a place where it will be there forever, and people like it can't be erased. Things like specifically forgotten aspects of Black history that would get lost to time if we let it get lost to time. He's trying to capture it, put it in a movie that people will watch, and surround it with a bunch of other interesting concepts, and just put it in front of people so that they then do their own research, and this becomes something that no one's going to forget it. No one, like, this very specific aspect of our culture isn't going to be lost, because I'm going to make it to
Right.
where no one's going to be able to forget this. Everyone's going to have to remember this, and we're going to have to hold this in our hearts forever and in our minds, and our culture will be solidified. Our history will be solidified, and it
Mm.
won't be lost to time, which is, a theme of the movie as well, with
Yeah.
Sammy and his music. But we got to wrap this up. We've been
Could
talking
do that. We
forever.
could.
But yeah, it was great having you on.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, it was just great having you. Is there anywhere you want people to find you? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Sure. This is very trippy. I'm so used to watching podcasts, and that's the question asked. Yeah. I make music under the name Black Norma. Yeah, Black_Norma. You can be able to find my IG there. Always working on recording stuff, and yeah, that page will be evolving as time goes on. So yeah, um, yeah, it's very cool being here. And again, Deshaun, thanks for having me. Thanks for being a great moderator. And yeah, it was just great talking about a cool piece of cinema. And look forward to talking about The Last of Us.